We had been married for 3.5 years when I found out. Not 10, not 20, just under 4 years, long enough to build a life, but short enough that the pain still felt fresh, raw, and premature. The betrayal wasn't obvious at first. It crept in subtly, like a slow leak in a tire. You don't notice until the whole thing goes flat. It was the subtle changes that gave it away. Her laughter at texts she never explained, the way she locked her phone, the increasing distance in bed, and most telling of all, the empty look in her eyes when we made eye contact. Like I was a shadow of a man she once cared about, now standing in the way of her new life. I didn't scream, I didn't rage, I didn't throw her phone across the room when I saw the messages. I just stood there, heart pounding so loud, it muffled my own breath, scrolling through the thread between her and someone named Adam. It wasn't just physical, that's what made it worse. It was emotional, romantic, personal. There were, "I miss you," "You make me feel alive again," and worst of all, he doesn't even notice. I noticed, I had noticed for months. I just didn't want it to be true. I was a fool, but I was a loyal one. That night, she came home to dinner I had cooked, and a smile I forced. I said nothing, not because I was weak, but because I was planning. Rage burns fast, strategy is slow, and I had decided that if she could be that deceitful, that calculated, then I would be just as calm and quiet in my exit. I couldn't make her feel the pain I felt, but I could show her what it's like to lose someone without a scene. No yelling, no fighting, just absence. I spent the next 2 weeks preparing. I quietly moved some money out of our joint account, transferred key items, passport, documents, a few sentimental belongings to a private storage unit, rented a small furnished apartment across the city under a different name. And then one morning, while she was at a yoga retreat that I now knew was a weekend getaway with him, I packed what little I needed and walked out the door. I left my ring on the counter with a note that simply read, "I know, please don't contact me." And then I vanished. For almost a year, I became a ghost. I deleted all social media, blocked her number, moved jobs, moved gyms, even changed my car. I didn't tell our mutual friends where I went. I didn't want her to know anything. I wasn't running from her. I was freeing myself from the wreckage she left behind. Because when someone poisons the well, you don't stay and sip, hoping they'll stop. You find a new source of life. The hardest part wasn't being alone. It was grieving someone who was still alive. I would wake up some mornings reaching for her side of the bed, only to feel cold sheets and an even colder truth. I'd see couples at coffee shops, hand in hand, laughing over nothing, and I'd feel this ache, this hollow feeling in my chest, like I'd been exiled from a version of life that once felt possible. But I kept moving, quietly, deliberately, like a man rebuilding himself, brick by brick from the inside out. I never told my family the full story, just that things didn't work out. They respected my silence. My mother suspected. I could tell. She always had a sixth sense for these things, but she never pushed. My father, a man of few words, simply said, "Sometimes leaving is the only strength we've got." I held on to that, let it carry me through the nights where the weight of her betrayal felt like a stone in my chest. Then, one afternoon, almost a full year later, I got a knock on the door. A knock I hadn't heard in so long. It startled me. I peeked through the peephole and felt every ounce of blood drain from my face. It was her. No makeup, hair tied back, a look on her face I had never seen before, somewhere between panic and devastation. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but emotionally, like life had taken more from her than she thought it would. I didn't open the door at first. I just stood there, watching her shift her weight from one foot to the other, wringing her hands. She knocked again. "Please," she whispered, as if she knew I was on the other side. "Please, just talk to me." I didn't move. I was stone. She stood there for 5 more minutes before sliding an envelope under the door and walking away. I waited until I heard the elevator before picking it up. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with memory, with the echo of a life that no longer belonged to me. Inside was a letter, handwritten, pages long, and it began with 4 words I never expected to read. I ruined everything, completely. The letter was shaky. The handwriting slanted like it had been written with trembling hands. I sat at the table, staring at the first page for what felt like hours before finally reading it. I ruined everything, completely. That opening line kept echoing in my head like it was taunting her, not me. She went on to recount how the affair didn't become the fairy tale she'd fantasized it would be. Apparently, Adam, her great escape, had slowly withdrawn from her after I left. It started small, missed calls, half-hearted dates. Then came the excuses. Busy with work. Need some space. It's too complicated. Within 3 months of my exit, he ghosted her completely. She admitted that she thought leaving me would unlock something magical, that her affair wasn't supposed to end in betrayal, but in a new chapter of happiness. I didn't expect you to leave like that, she wrote. You were always so calm, so kind. I thought you'd fight. I thought you'd stay and yell and scream. I thought I'd be able to twist it somehow, convince you to forgive me eventually, but you didn't even give me that chance. Reading her words, I realized just how much she had counted on my silence being weakness. She mistook my loyalty for submission, and when I left without a sound, it wasn't just my presence that vanished, it was her control. She described how friends started distancing themselves. Apparently, the story got out, piece by piece. Some of her own friends stopped answering her calls. One mutual friend told her bluntly, "You blew up a marriage for a guy who disappeared on you. What do you expect us to say?" Her job, once her pride and joy, had become a source of misery. Rumors had spread. Adam was a colleague. HR got involved. No official action was taken, but she was quietly sidelined, passed over for projects, isolated. Suddenly, she wasn't the admired one anymore. She was a cautionary tale. "I've never felt more alone," she wrote. "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't know who I am anymore." That part stuck with me, because for years, I'd been asking the same question in silence. Who was she? The woman who held my hand at our wedding, or the one who whispered secrets to another man while I slept 2 rooms away? Her letter offered no apology that could undo the damage, but it gave me something else. Confirmation. She had fallen into the very hole she dug for me. What followed were paragraphs of regret. She detailed how she went back through our photos, our texts, our vacations. She talked about our first apartment and how she missed the way I folded laundry, the way I always left a note when I left early for work. Small things. Things I had stopped doing the moment I felt her slipping away. "I thought love was supposed to feel electric," she wrote. "But now I realize it's in the quiet things. The things you did without ever being asked." The final page wasn't a plea to get back together. That at least, she had the decency not to beg for. But she did ask one thing: can we talk? Even just once. I need to look you in the eyes and see what I threw away. That sentence made me close the letter slowly and set it aside. Not because I was moved, but because I knew then she didn't want closure. She wanted a window. A sliver of hope that something could be salvaged. But I wasn't the man she left. And I wasn't about to become him again for the sake of her comfort. I didn't contact her for days. I let the silence breathe, let the gravity of her loneliness grow roots. I wasn't being cruel. I was being complete. Sometimes the most merciful thing you can give someone who destroyed you is a mirror and time to look into it. Let them see the cracks, the aging, the disillusionment. Let them sit in the house they burned down and feel the cold walls without your warmth. I wasn't going to let her rewrite the story in person. I wasn't going to become a chapter she got to edit. And yet, despite myself, I couldn't help but reflect on the nights I laid awake, wondering what I lacked, on the holidays we spent with her family where I smiled through the weight in my chest, on the gifts I gave her while she was giving herself to someone else. It hurt. It still did. But the difference was, now it hurt clean. No more fog, no more confusion, just truth. Truth, as painful as it is, always offers a place to stand, and I was standing tall. The next time she showed up at my door, I was ready, not with anger, not with vengeance, but with peace. And peace, I've learned, can be more terrifying than fury, because it's absolute. It means the war is over, and you lost. She stood at my door again, same posture, same pleading eyes, but this time she looked even more hollow. There was a desperation in her presence, not the fiery kind, not demanding or angry, just empty. Like a woman finally realizing she had set her own world on fire and watched it burn too long. She opened her mouth to speak, but I raised my hand gently, not to silence her in anger, but to stop the moment from becoming something it didn't need to be. "You said everything in the letter," I said calmly. There's nothing more that will help you now. She swallowed hard, blinking rapidly. I know. I needed to see if you meant it. If you really never wanted to see me again. There was this childlike hope in her voice, like she was searching for some hidden kindness I hadn't stripped from her. I nodded slowly. I meant every word. You were right in the letter. You ruined everything. But you weren't wrong about one more thing. This was never about electricity. Love isn't sparks. It's not stolen kisses or secret nights. It's showing up when no one's watching, and you stop showing up. Her lips quivered, but she didn't cry. Not yet. Do you hate me? She asked softly, like a schoolgirl bracing for punishment. I shook my head, and it broke her a little more than if I had said yes. No, I don't hate you. That would mean I still carry you with me, and I don't. That silence that followed was suffocating. The final nail in the coffin, because it told her the truth she feared most. I was done. I miss you, she whispered. I miss everything. I looked her in the eyes and said, you don't miss me. You miss the version of yourself that existed when I loved you, and she's gone now, just like I am. That's when the tears came. Quiet. Genuine. A sadness so thick, it made her knees buckle slightly. But I didn't reach out. I didn't pull her into my arms like I used to. Because love isn't charity, and forgiveness isn't permission. She turned slowly and walked back down the hall. Each step she took was heavy, like the weight of what she lost was finally sinking in, and I didn't follow. I closed the door, not with triumph, not with coldness, but with finality. Not all goodbyes are dramatic. Some are silent, and sometimes that silence echoes louder than any slammed door ever could. In the weeks that followed, I found myself lighter, calmer. Her presence no longer haunted my memories. Her betrayal no longer owned my narrative. I reclaimed myself in full. I went for walks without checking over my shoulder. I smiled at strangers without wondering if I'd see her face. I even began dating again, not because I needed someone, but because I had finally healed enough to want someone who wanted me too. One night, I sat outside with a glass of wine, watching the sky shift from pink to purple, and I realized something profound. I didn't survive her betrayal. I transcended it. I didn't just recover, I evolved. The man she cheated on no longer existed. He was buried quietly the day I walked out. And in his place was someone stronger, wiser, unshakable. They say closure is something you get from the person who hurt you, but that's not true. Closure is what happens the moment you realize you never needed them to understand. You never needed their apology. You just needed the strength to walk away without looking back. And I had done that. She may have gotten my silence, she may have written her regrets, but I got something she never will. Peace. The kind you earn. The kind no one can take. And in the end, that was the real surprise she never expected.